What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty Podcast, presented by the FantasyHolics Podcast Network. I am Bo. That is Brant. Brant, we're 36 days away from the NFL draft. We haven't done as much rookie coverage this year as we have in the past. It's time to kind of jump into it. The free agency period was really, really exciting, and then it's kind of plateaued a little bit. We still got some names out there that are going to mean things for fantasy. But it's time to go ahead and jump into this and start talking about these incoming rookies a little bit. And what better spot to start than the running back position, Brant?
Yeah, absolutely. What a great time for sports right now. You said it. We're 36 days away from the draft. You got March Madness about to kick off tomorrow. You got your first four games. You got your Mizzou going on. I don't really have a dog in the fight. I've just enjoyed kind of college basketball. I do love Duke, if you guys want my honest opinion of who's winning it all. I think everybody's got, or a lot of people on the same thing. You got the women's March Madness about to kick off too, which has been kind of crazy. Obviously, I got a bunch of daughters, so I'm a little more into women's sports than most other people. But it's a great time right now to get you that nice buildup right before the NFL draft, getting there, and then getting in, and baseball season's kicking off. I think we had our first two regular season games. I'm not a big baseball guy, but the first two regular season games over in Tokyo, and then back to preseason a little bit. So it's a great time for sports when you don't have football to look forward to. So this is a great time in the sports world, and a great time to start diving into these rookies. Like I said, we're diving into these running backs today. I've been kind of off my game on research this year, like you said, with our rookies. I'm starting to really dive in and watch a lot of film on them. I think I got 2 or 3 done today. Players, not just running backs, but players in general.
Yeah, for me, I haven't really had that itch to go do a whole lot of research either because, last year I had the number 1 overall pick, and it was pretty consensus it was going to be Marvin Harrison. In our home league, of course, I'm talking about. And this year via trade, I have it back-to-back years, so it's going to be a guy we're going to talk about here in just a few seconds. So there's not been a whole lot of reason for me to do a whole lot of research in our home league. Real quick, Jamie said, what's up, guys, dropping in the live. Jamie, what's up, man? You'll have to let us know. It's our top. We're talking about running backs today. Outside of the number 1, who's your number 2 running back in this class? Because I think everybody's number 1, which, Brant, we talked about at pre-show. We were going to start it with the number 1 guy, rip it off like a Band-Aid, and then go through and actually talk about 10 through 2, kind of see, where the excitement is here for us. I'm excited to see the different names. It's obviously Ashton Jeanty at number 1, right? The 5'8", 211-pound running back out of Boise State. If you don't know where he is, you lived under, or who he is, you lived under a rock this year in college football. 30 total touchdowns this season between rushing and pass catching. 4.4, 240. Just an explosive player. Definitely somebody who's going to be an impact player in the fantasy community, Brant. And I think he's consensus number 1 across most people's boards at this point.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth, possibly moving people over him here and there, but he is pretty consistent. I've tried to do some more research to try to get myself off of it being consensus to maybe have an argument. So the way we're doing the running backs today, guys, is we're going to talk about, who they are, where they're from. And one thing we really like about them, or something that stuck out to us in college, you brought up the 30 total touchdowns last year. I'm going to bring up the fact that he saw 20 or more carries, not just touches, 20 or more carries at all but 3 games this year, which is phenomenal. It shows that he is willing and able to carry that workload. So I absolutely do love that for Ashton Jeanty. I do believe he is the number 1 running back.
Absolutely. And again, not a whole lot of, discrepancies there. This is where it kind of gets interesting. I think everybody's 2 through 10 is very different. Obviously, that 2 through 10 is going to get a little cemented as the actual NFL draft takes place, and we learn a little bit more about these landing spots and things of that nature. But let's jump right into it. Let's start at number 10, Brant. Who do you have at number 10? Jamie, I did see you respond to us. We'll get closer when one of us brings up Hampton here.
All right, so I will say my top 5 I ripped off. Just boom, 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 boom. I felt so comfortable. And 6 through 10, I was like, this is a coin flip. So this is where I'm at right now with my heart, my gut, reading a little bit on them. And Bayshaw Tutin out of Virginia Tech is my number 10 running back. The 5'11" ran a 4.32 40, 206-pound back out of Virginia Tech. And one of my favorite stats out of him, 23, 27, and 31 receptions in his 3 years in college. So he has shown the fact that he can be a pass-catching back as well. So that was one thing that I really did like about him. I liked his burst of speed. I think this guy is going to maybe be a little project back, maybe a third down back to start his career. But this is a guy that could possibly move himself into some relevancy.
Okay. Yeah. So you talked about the 1 through 5 being your kind of bread and butter. I've actually got 2 guys in my bottom 5 that I really like, that I think if they go to the right landing spot, they are guys that are going to have far superior value than where they're currently at. And one of them, Brant, and I'll get to it in a minute, reminds me an awful lot of a guy from this year who was kind of Cinderella in the running back class, and Bucky Irving. So I'll talk about that one in a minute. But at number 10 for me, I have DJ Giddens out of Kansas State. DJ 6 foot tall, 212 pounds, ran a 4.34 or 4.43 at the combine. Here's my favorite thing about him, Brant. Kansas State, not really in the past has been known as a powerhouse football program, really kind of starting to come into their own. He had 7 games this year over 100 rush yards. Okay, so he consistently was able to do that. And I went and looked, and some of these games that he performed better at were some of those teams that were better in the Big 12 this year. And it was almost kind of like his game elevated when it needed to matter. And I think part of that was because his touches went down a little bit in games that it didn't matter as much. But DJ Giddens, 7 games over 100 yards rushing in Big 12 play. Definitely a guy that I think I talked about a little bit on my solo episode a couple of weeks ago when you weren't able to be with us. This was a guy that had a lot to gain from the combine. I think he's still one of those guys that has a lot to gain from the NFL draft. And I'll say this, Brant, before we move on. DJ Giddens, for me, is at 10 right now before the NFL draft. If he's a day 3 pick, he falls down that list obviously much further. If he's a day 2 pick, I think DJ Giddens could end up much higher than 10 in my rankings.
Okay, absolutely. So I'll go into number 9, and the last name may sound familiar, and that's Etienne. I got Trevor Etienne, the 5'9" back out of Georgia. Florida. He spent some time down south. We'll just say that. 5'9", 198 pounds. So that does scare me a little bit, being an under 200-pound back. 4.4 240. One of the biggest things is, once again, what's one of the best things for a running back to have is being able to receive the ball in fantasy football. 32 receptions in 2024 there with the Georgia Bulldogs. So I absolutely love his receiving upside. This is a guy that I could see falling to the right spot as a third down back to start with, and then taking over that workload back as he puts on a little more muscle and learns the game a little bit. He does have the help of his brother in the future, helping him out and everything else. This is kind of like that James Cook situation where a lot of people thought he was going to come in as a third down back, and then he took over that backfield there. You know, once you gain the experience, it's not as hard to take over a backfield.
Yeah, I agree. Here's the thing, Brant. We're already 2 spots in, and you've named 2 guys I don't have in my top 10 right now. So definitely some differences of opinion at this point. This is exactly why I like this thing, because it'll be interesting to see, revisit these lists in 36 days and see, hey, I'm starting to be more on board with where you were versus vice versa. So definitely interesting. At my number 9, I have Devin Neal, the 5'11", 213-pound back out of Kansas. Did run a pretty slow 4.5 8.40 at the combine, which I think hurt his value a little bit. But he is definitely that bruising type back. Going to be more of a third and short goal line type of guy, potentially. Did average 5.8 yards per carry again in the Big 12 with Kansas. A much better Kansas team this year than they've been, in the past. But again, this is a guy, Brant, that I think his body, his size, a lot of what he has going for him translates very well to a zone scheme in the NFL, which I think we're seeing more and more coaches go to. So I think Devin Neal's yards per carry and the way he's built just really aligns him well with kind of today's shape of the NFL.
Well, I guess I'll jump right into my number 8, and that's Devin Neal out of Kansas is my number 8. The one thing I loved about him, 200 carries, 20-plus yards in the last 2 years. 2 seasons shows that he can be that workhorse if given the opportunity. I do love this guy. I think he's going to be a guy that you could see slowly creeping up boards as the draft comes in. So Devin Neal's my number 8.
Okay. For me, Brant, I had at number 8, this is my guy that I think could be this year's Bucky Irving. This is a guy that I really, really, really love. The more tape I watch on this guy, the more intrigued I am of him. There is another league that I consider very close second to our home league for me that I only have a second-round pick in. I need to get younger at running back. This is absolutely a player I'm going to be studying hard in that league. It's R.J. Harvey out of the University of Central Florida, 5'9", so a little on the shorter side, 208 pounds, ran a 4.4 40. Here's the thing, Brant, small school, typically they don't produce the best talent, right? 7th in FBS last year in yards per carry at 6.8 yards per carry. He was in the top 10, I think, of 20 rushes over 20 yards or longer, tongue-tied there. Just a kid that I absolutely love. And again, this is another one where if he steps into any kind of landing spot where he can compete for that one, Brant, his stock's going to fly through the roof. RJ Harvey is my Cinderella story on this year's draft class, depending on what his draft equity looks like and what that landing spot is.
Okay. All right. Well, we're back on track where we both have 2 outside of our top 10s on both lists. I did not have anything on RJ Harvey. I will have to check that in. My number 7 is a guy that I've talked about. If he goes to a certain spot, I could really see myself skyrocketing him in my rankings because this coach does like, and that's Cam Scatterbo out of Arizona State. 5'10", 219 pounds, 4.62 40. One thing I loved, he's not just a bruiser back. 45 receptions this past season. 45 receptions this past season. So he's not just a ground and pound type of guy. This guy runs like he's got a chip on his shoulder. He's got everything in the world to prove and nothing to lose. He has everything to gain and nothing to lose. I love the way he plays football. I love the way he runs the ball. I think this is a guy that could really move up some draft boards here.
And we stay on track. I do not have Cam in my top 10 either, Brand. I think I just get too much Toby Gerhart-esque play from him, which just never translated into the NFL. And I love Toby Gerhart coming out. I hope I'm wrong on Cam Scatterbo. I'm a little nervous about him. I just couldn't get him in there. I think he's probably right there at 11, 12 for me if we went that deep, but I just can't get him in there for my – we talked about this, I think, a little bit in the past. I think we did it offline, but I can't get myself in on Cam at this point. So for me at 7, I've got Quinshon Judkins, 6 foot, 221 pounds, 4.48 out of Ohio State. And listen, here's my thing on Quinshon Judkins. Right now we're seeing in the NFL landscape, we used to talk about how I got to get that next bell cow, that next 3-down running back, that next guy that's going to be on the field for 75 to 85% of snaps. But that doesn't really exist a whole lot anymore, Brand. A lot of these teams are going to, 1-2 punches, or even sometimes 3 running backs. We feed the hot hand, get these guys in, keep them all loose, don't get anybody injured. I think Quinshon Judkins had a very solid season at Ohio State with another running back I'm going to talk about later in Travion Henderson. I think those guys really showed that, hey, we're already ready to be a 1-2 punch. We did it in college. When one of you was tired, the other come in. It was a yin-yang situation, and it really propelled Ohio State offensively to always have that freshness out of the backfield. Both these guys have very similar situations as far as speed and pass catching and one cut. And I just really think that these 2 Ohio State running backs, again, are going to go to spots where maybe not necessarily be a bell cow-esque running back, but really kind of already have that mold of, hey, I can go in and have 15 to 17 touches and make myself productive off of that.
Okay. I will bring out what I like about him a little bit later in our countdown here. I do have him a little higher than 7. At number 6, I have Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee. 5'8", 200 pounds, 4.35 40. He has a nose for the end zone. This is what I love. He had 22 touchdowns this year. I know it's not as many. He had 22 total touchdowns, rushing touchdowns. He had 22 total. I just think he has a nose for the end zone. I watched a lot more Tennessee games than I thought I ever would in my life this past year, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just because that's who was on when I turned the TV on. He has very good patience. He had his up and down times, but I think this is a guy that could make an immediate impact in a backfield as being the number 2 to a 1-2 punch right off the rip.
All right, number 6, I'm going to talk about Dylan Sampson out of the University of Tennessee. So we're copacetic on that one. First one of the second one, I guess, if you count Genty. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Brant. My thing that I had written down about him was 22 rushing touchdowns in a competitive SEC conference. Definitely a strong indicator of future success when you can find the end zone in a Power 5 conference like this. The other thing is how historic Dylan Sampson's career was at Tennessee, how many records he broke while he was there. And when you think back to some of the running backs we've had and just recent memory, you talk about guys like Alvin Kamara and stuff. I think Sampson, is definitely one of those players that, again, goes to the right landing spot. Maybe this is a spot where he follows Kamara, goes to, New Orleans and sits for a year or whatever. But yeah, I do think Sampson has the chance to really explode. That 4.35 40 is very impressive, considering the size of the body. This is a guy that's at 200 pounds, not under. So definitely some excitement about Dylan Sampson for me.
Absolutely.
Hang on, Brant. Before you get into your number 5, I'm going to let you answer this question from Jamie here.
Yeah, I think I would. I think he is a better version. I think he'll be a little bit better than Jalen Wright. I think he is definitely a better version of Jalen Wright.
My thing is this. I think Jalen Wright's a fine product. We didn't really get to see a lot of it last year because you still had Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert. Mostert's out the door now. They did bring in Madison, so we'll see what that figures into. But I think Jalen Wright just didn't fall into the greatest of situations. So if Sampson ends up in a spot where he's got a more clear opportunity for those early touches in his career, I think we can say that. But at this point, jury's still out. I think obviously the Tennessee factor of this is Dylan Sampson was more successful in his time at Tennessee. So, you've got that going at this point. But all right, Brent, go ahead and take us through or into your top 5, I guess.
Number 5, I got Judkins. You already talked about him. My favorite thing is he had over 1,000 yards in all 3 years and over 270 carries in 2023 and 2022. I know he didn't see it this year, but either way, he's shown that he can be a workhorse. He's shown that he can get the yards. I absolutely love this guy. Mm-hmm. I think he can make an immediate impact on most teams.
Okay. At my number 5, I'm going to go with Brashard Smith out of SMU, 5'10", 194 pounds. It was a little hard to put a guy in my top 10, or excuse me, my top 5 that is under, that 200-pound threshold. That's kind of where you like to see your running backs at. But he's close enough that I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. 4.39 40. I don't know if I got that. So sub 4.4 at the running back position is juicy. 39 receptions this year for SMU. Again, definitely really shows that he has that knack as a pass catcher. And I think, again, this is one that with that pass catching upside for him, he's kind of got that little wiggle in his hips that you like to see out of these running backs when it comes to making guys miss. I think this is a guy that comes in and he can establish himself fantasy relevancy wise early in his career with his pass catching work, for a team that may need that. You saw the Chargers already come out and say, hey, we're going to get a little shiftier, speedier guy to kind of pair to be the lightning to our Thunder and Najee Harris. This could be one of those situations where if you see a guy like this go, maybe he has that Austin Eckler role to Najee, and you kind of get that 1-2 punch where he steps into a spot where it's early work. Again, it's the pass catching, it's the whole body of work for me with Brashard Smith that I really find intriguing, Grant.
Good. All right. I do not have him inside my top 10. So we're back to even now, 3-3. My number 4, I have Travion Henderson out of the Ohio State, 5'10", 202 pounds, 4.4 340. This is what I loved about him. This is what I absolutely loved. The last 2 years. Let's talk about 2023, 5.4 yards per carry. So let's say 2024. Let's go for 7.1 yards per carry. This is a guy in a Big Ten conference that's normally known for their defensive line. This is the guy that's moving the chains. Boom, boom, boom. Staying ahead of the sticks. I absolutely love him. This is a guy that these top 4 backs that we're going to talk about, or that I have in my top 4, because we might have another one outside of each other's top 4. These these top 4 that I like are guys that I could see getting drafted and being the starter day one. I absolutely love Henderson, and I love what he brings to the table.
All right, Brent, here's your shocker from me. At number 4, I have Omarion Hampton, 6 foot, 221 pounds, 4.46 out of the University of North Carolina. Listen, there's not a whole lot not to love here about him. 281 carries this year for UNC. I've got a sour taste in my mouth, man. Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, those guys came into the league. We thought they were going to be, the next great thing out of UNC, or the next great thing, and then coming out of UNC, sour taste in my mouth. I think the top 4 for me really is, 4, 3, and 2 for me, I think really are a preference situation rather than a distaste for one or the other. I think Omarion Hampton is going to be very successful. I just have him slightly lower than the other 2 I'm going to talk about in my top 3.
It's not much of a shocker, as I have Omarion Hampton as number 3 as well. The one thing I do like about him is you already alluded to that too, 281 carries. He had over 250 carries in the last 2 seasons for North Carolina. I'm not putting North Carolina back in my top 2 until proven otherwise, after how the other ones have not lived up to that hype. I love, I still do like Williams. I like the fact he's getting a shot there in Dallas, but I can't put a North Carolina back up in my top 2 until someone proves me otherwise. So he's sitting at number 3 for that reason.
Yeah, and Jamie asked, do you think Hampton has a shot to be a late first round? Here's the thing. Yes, absolutely. These guys do. I think we're kind of starting to see that shift away from running backs early. My biggest one that I think back to is if you think of Kenneth Walker, he was kind of like that number 2 guy in that class and went early second round to the Seahawks. So I do think it's a trend. I mean, you obviously get your Jahmyr Gibbses and your Bijan Robinsons and your ETNs and your Najee Harris's. These guys do happen every year. I do think you see Genty go in the first. I think there's a possibility that there is another one. So it's just going to depend on what GM falls in love with what running back that's not named Ashton Genty and reaches up to go get there in the first. So I think there is a chance that you see, one of these other hot commodities, if you will, out of this back or the running back situation get drafted early. My thing is this though, Jamie, and I'll say this, Brant and I have this discussion a lot on the podcast. Do your own research. Don't fall victim to draft equity being everything, because if you think back to the DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins, Clyde Edwards-Helaire class, if you look at your research ahead of time, a lot of people had Clyde Edwards-Helaire like 4th or 5th best running back in that class. He goes to Kansas City. He leapfrogs. And look at him now in comparison. Even J.K. Dobbins is still putting up better stats at this point than Edwards-Helaire. So it's definitely worth doing your own research. And I do think there will be a second running back drafted in this first round. We'll just see which one it is.
Okay. All right. I do think you could see one sneak in. A lot of these teams are talking about how they're starting to like running backs and they want to add one. It's scary, but I definitely could see another one sneaking in just because everybody seems to be coming out saying they want to add a running back.
I think the only thing that will hold that back is I think this draft class is so deep for running back talent, and it's outside of obviously your Ashton Genty. I think it's kind of watered down talent. So I think it's a lot of day 2 picks, in my opinion, but I do still think there will be one. All right. We left off after your number 3 as Hampton. My number 3 is the guy you've already spoke about, is Trayvon Henderson, 5'10", 202 pounds. We already talked about all that. Again, the thing I highlighted on him, Brant, that I love, if I talk about RJ Harvey and how much I love him and how he was 7th in FBS in yards per carry at 6.8, how am I not going to talk about Trayvon Henderson at 7.1? That is absurd. My only thing is this. What would the 7.1 yards per carry have looked like if there was no Quinshon Judkins to spell him as often as he did? If this guy had 225 carries this year, what would that number have looked like? So I do obviously think Trayvon Henderson is a better talent than Quinshon Judkins. Otherwise, they'd be roles reversed here. But I think it'll be interesting to see what his usage looks like in the NFL. We see that he's very impactful with his touches, obviously, to get to that 7.1 yards per carry. And those things are things that are going to matter to an NFL GM, and they should matter to you as fantasy players as well, because if you get a guy who gets 10 touches a game but averages 7.1 yards carry, that's 70 yards of fantasy, probably going to find the end zone, maybe add a catch or two. You're looking at some consistent fantasy points there. So I do think what's holding me back on Travion Henderson being higher is just that Quinshon Judkins and the what ifs of him having, the bulk of the carries and the bulk of the work. So that's kind of where I'm at on Travion Henderson. So, all right, Brent, let's talk about number 2 here, because obviously I think we both have the same guy at number 2 since we haven't talked about this player yet for either one of us. Tell me who you got for number 2, and then I've got a question for you afterwards.
Ollie Gordon, right? No, I'm just messing with you.
I do love me some Ollie Gordon.
I got Caleb Johnson out of the University of Iowa, 6'1", 224-pound back, 4.57 40. Okay, a little slower than the rest of the crew here. But we've talked about it with 2 other running backs. 6.4 yards per carry as the lead back there for Iowa this year. So he absolutely got the job done with having the bulk of the work there. So that's the one thing I loved about him, was him showing that against Big Ten defenses.
Okay. So, at number 2, I obviously have Caleb Johnson as well. Here's the thing, Brant. When I study and watch Caleb Johnson's film, I see a lot of Najee Harris. Najee Harris was slower at the combine, 4.66, big body, 226-pound frame, slightly taller than Caleb Johnson, slightly taller. But Caleb Johnson, I think, embodies that powerful, physical, run it down your throat, destroy you running back, where your safeties try to tackle him around the ankles late in game because they're tired of getting punished. I absolutely love Caleb Johnson. Obviously, you do too. Otherwise, he wouldn't be at your number 2. Here's my question, and I want to pose this to you, because I too have considered moving one running back in front of Ashton Jeanty, and I could see myself doing that under some certain circumstances. So let me ask you this: all things equal, if these guys go into the NFL, the draft, let's say they both have first-round equity on them, okay? You can pick the spot where both of these guys go. But where does Caleb Johnson have to go in relativeness to Ashton Jeanty that you could put Caleb Johnson ahead of him in your rankings?
Johnson would have to go to a spot like a Dallas where he's an immediate impact. The Raiders, immediate impact. He would have to go to a spot that I know he's going. Now, that would also have to include Jeanty going to a spot where there's already an established running back, even if it's a veteran running back. Jeanty goes to the Chargers. Caleb Johnson goes to, goes to Dallas. I'm probably going to really consider moving that needle. I know Williams is there in Dallas, and I do like that, but that's a 1-year deal. I know Najee's there. We've seen Najee at his best. So that is how I would be putting Caleb Johnson over Jeanty after that draft, is if one is going to where I know he's probably going to outdo whatever back is there. But Jeanty would have to really compete with a back that we've seen go over 1,000 yards in every single season, or even Minnesota is one of the places I always think about. You just re-signed Aaron Jones. You add Jeanty to Minnesota. I'm probably going to jump him over the next couple of years, and then probably try to go get Jeanty a year or two down the road, as he's only playing the 2-punch.
All right, so here's the picture I'm going to paint. We're going to end on this. All right. Caleb Johnson gets drafted by the Chicago Bears, who it's already rumored Ben Johnson wants to run DeAndre Swift out of town again. Okay. Just revamp that offensive line. So you've got Caleb Johnson in Chicago, young core, up and coming offense, stud offensive coordinator or offensive minded head coach, former offensive coordinator. And Jeanty goes to Las Vegas with the Raiders, Pete Carroll, but less of a solidified offense. Where are you at with those two at that point?
I think I'm going to go with Caleb Williams. Dang it, I did it again. I think I'm going with Caleb Johnson.
It's still fair because that would be his quarterback at that point.
I think I'm going to go with Caleb Johnson. You got the rookie quarterback. You got the innovative head coach there that you know is probably going to be there for the long haul. You got the new offensive line, all the new weapons in Rome and Caleb Williams, and then you put Caleb Johnson. So I think I'm going to go with that, and here's why. Pete's only in town Pete drafting a running back scares the crap out of me. And if he's going to take one in the first round, it's really going to scare me because that contract is going to be longer than Pete's coaching career there with the Raiders. Because I don't think Pete has more than 2 more years. So who says a new coach doesn't come in 2 years and want to just move on from that? Maybe you don't want that speed back. Maybe he really wants that bruiser, I'm going to run through you type of guy. So I think I would put Caleb above that.
Okay. So it's interesting to see the top 10 here where we're at in mid-March. Can't wait to revisit these lists, in just 36 short days or probably 40 days. Give it all day 3 days through and see where we're at on this. Thanks for tuning in with us. For those of you that come and hung out, Jamie, thank you for getting involved and shooting your shot out there with your opinions. Definitely enjoy seeing other people's perspectives as well. But Brant, I'm going to say this. I'm going to leave you with this. This is my parting gifts. Go look up and study some RJ Harvey. I think you will find yourself falling in love. I can't wait to hear what you think of him after you spend some time watching him.
I'll definitely get into that. I got the names written down of the 3 that you had. I try to avoid some of the lower school running backs when I first do my first top 10, just because you always see them slide in and then it takes a little bit. But I'll check them out. Don't forget to tune in with us on day 1 of that draft. In 36 days, we'll be live. We're going to spend, I would say, the entire time with you, but we're Fatboyz, so we're probably going to have to run off the screen once or twice or
waddle off the screen.
So we're going to spend the majority of the night with you. I do have something a little bit earlier, but I'm going to try to get straight on with it at the draft that night. I think it starts at 7:00 on, help me out with the date. I just had it written down. Here it is.
In 36 days.
The 24th of April, that Thursday. Join us. I think it's about 7:00 at night, Central Time. We'll be live for the whole draft. We're going to have some special guests. If you as a viewer would like to join us, get in the comments with us. Shoot us a message on the FantasyHolics. Shoot us a message on the Fatboyz Facebook page. We'd love to have some guests. We'd love to talk football with some other guys. Sometimes it gets boring just talking football with the same 2 fat guys that talk it all day at work, and then we turn around and sometimes we're going over the same stuff. So we would love to have some more words. That wraps it up for us today. I think we're probably going to hit some wide receivers next week. Maybe some quarterbacks in the future here. I've really got to start diving into these books here. I say books like I actually read. But that's going to wrap it up. As always, stay hungry.
Stay fat, my friends.